Tonight we're going to start the series on relationships. And I have to kind of tell you a story about this series. Uh, but before I do that, I want to do the reading for tonight, which I picked from the Woman's Meditation book. I love this book because basically, especially from July 28th till around August 30, there's some really great readings in there on relationships. So I want to read the one from July 28th. The beauty of loving someone is the feeling of wholeness that I experience, the need for that individual in my life. I'm part of you and you're part of me. Feeling that connects two people and makes them necessary to each other. What is asked of us by our Creator is that we love one another. Where love doesn't flow easily, perhaps we can just decide not to hurt someone. If we each avoided hurting all people just for one day, lives would be transformed. We see the world with a fresh perspective. The more we love others, the deeper our love will grow for all others. Loving lifts our hearts and lightens our burdens. Every day's tribulations can become triumphs when we carry love in our hearts. Love fills us up, and the more we share it, the more fuller we become. We are connected, each of us to one another, all of us together. As I pass a friend today, I'll be grateful for their contribution to my wholeness too. I just love that reading because it kind of fits right into the concept of this series I want to do. I got to kind of tell you a story about how this series came about. Because this is the series I'm doing tonight is based on a book that I wrote called Relationships, the Gifts of Life. Well, the book has a story behind it. Now, I always tell you that it's amazing how God works in this program. I call them God winks, that things happen to us in a very powerful way. But I want to share with you something which is really important, how this book came about. I want to go back to the year 1986. I had given a talk at Malvern Institute in Philadelphia. And after the talk, I had a cup of coffee in the cafeteria, and a lady came and sat with me whom I never met before. Her name was Annie. She sat down with me, and we just started to talk. And don't ask me why. That's why we say God works in mysterious ways. I just said to her, everybody wants me to write a book. I don't know how to write a book. So maybe what I'll do is ask people to tape my lectures. We had tapes back then. And tape my lectures, take them home, transcribe them, and I can use it as a foundation for the book. Annie looked me right in the eye and she said, "Not a problem, Vince. I did it already. I've been coming to your lectures for 3 years. I've taped them. I take them home and I type them out. So I learned them." So next week, she brought in the manuscript, my first book, and handed it to me. I then had a friend of mine from the Philadelphia Inquirer, Ken, who helped me edit it and put it together. I always say it takes a village. It takes so many different people to connect the dots and put things together. And that's why it's so important to understand the concept of relationships. Because whether we realize it or not, we have many different types of relationships in the course of our journey in life. We're all connected to each other. We all learn from one another. Every time we meet another human being, we are connected in relationship with that person. So relationship is a very special word. Unfortunately, tonight, the first lecture, I'm going to have to kind of depress you a little bit. Hope you don't mind. Because I'm going to talk tonight about describing unhealthy relationships. Then I'll spend 3 weeks on talking about the healthy side. I have to share this because I think we have to be able to take a look at what we refer to as addictive relationships or unhealthy relationships. And unfortunately, whether we realize it or not. The foundation of our relationships goes way back to when we were children. Whether we realize it or not, we picked up basic traits and characteristics in relationships in the first 10 years of our life, not only from our family of origin, but also from the other families we came in contact with. When I talked about the 5 families, the neighborhood, the culture, we picked up all kinds of traits, all kinds of characteristics, and we learned from the people around us. The interesting thing when it comes to this is to try to understand that basically how things are supposed to work. For a little girl, when she's born and comes into this world, her father is supposed to be the love of her life and the role model for relationships. Her mother is supposed to be her role model, what it means to be a woman, and vice versa for a male. And yet, many of us never totally experienced that. Because again, all of our family members, the people we connected with, they all had their idiosyncrasies, their behaviors, their concepts that they picked up and passed down from one generation to another. And so basically, we learn things as a result of that. And so when I look at this, I look at relationships. Most of you who've done my series on codependency know that I always talk about what I call the 3 concepts of addictive relationships. And they're based around the 3 words: isolation, fantasy, and caretaking. And normally kids that migrate towards isolation or migrate towards my nickname for that type of relationship is called hostage taking. People that migrate towards that, and normally kids that are usually very empty, very lonely. They never got a lot of intimacy, not a lot of closeness. So as a result, they're hungry. They're hungry for intimacy. They're hungry for closeness. And unfortunately, when they become adults, they search for it, but they search for it many times in the wrong places. You see, when I'm empty and I'm lonely, and somebody comes along that treats me nice, I want to take that person home. I want to keep them. And so really, what are we searching for? We're searching for the parent we never had. We're searching for someone to give us the gift of love. We're searching for a fullness inside of ourselves. Unfortunately, we can't take people hostage. And what happens a lot of times when I'm empty and I'm lonely, sometimes I get to a point where I'm scared to death. And if I do get close to someone, I have this fear of abandonment, this fear of rejection, this fear that somehow, some way, I have to make sure that they're always going to be there. And that fear is normal, because deep down inside, I become afraid, I become scared. I'm afraid that basically I'm not going to be able to truly experience. So therefore, what do I have to do? And I'll give you some examples of this. A good friend of mine, I've known this person for a long period of time, and it's sad. Came out of a very strange household. When he got married, his wife was a teacher. And one day, on a very snowy day, one of the teachers from the school gave his wife a ride home. And of course, it was a male teacher. And so the husband, when she got in the house, went off the deep end and went berserk and wanted to know whether she was having an affair with him. See, right away, the fears come into play. The fear of loss, the fear that something's going to happen, because they came out of a household where they walked on eggs, they walked around things, they always had been afraid something's going to happen. And as a result, I always need to know where you are. I need to know that you're always all right. I need to know that I can get a hold of you no matter what happens. So I'm always afraid something's going to go wrong, something's going to happen. The sad part about that is I try to box you in. I try to make sure you become almost like a possession. I don't know about you, but whenever you try to make another human being into a possession, you're basically you're going to lose that relationship. And that's why it's so important to realize sometimes that out of loneliness, out of emptiness, we keep looking for somebody to fill that void. You can't build good, healthy relationships on that type of life. And that's why I'll emphasize later on the value of working on yourself first, of developing a healthy sense of yourself as an individual. Because it can become very dangerous too. Because literally then I have to constantly be on guard. The second area is called fantasy. And unfortunately, these are kids that grow up in homes where there's a lot of insanity, a lot of craziness, a lot of anger. And many times these kids that are either abused, kids that have experienced incest or sexual abuse, kids that literally scared to death all the time. So at a very early age, they learn what I call a survival technique. And that is to make up stories. See, I can't handle what's going on in my house. So I create a fantasy house. I don't want anybody to come home to my house, but I tell people how wonderful, how fantastic. I'm constantly making things up because I don't want anybody to know what's really going on. So I'm being groomed to be able to tell secrets. But the scary thing about secrets, after you tell them long enough, you start to believe your own secrets. You believe your own fantasy because it becomes a normal to you. That's sad. And then when it comes to relationships, I have a lot of fear. So I have a fear of getting too close to someone. So what do? I develop what I refer to as fantasy relationships in my mind. I see people and I try to make believe that maybe that's going to be a magical person. So I create things. But see, a lot of this is about control. A lot of this is about the concept that I'm too scared to get too close to someone because they might find out who I am. They might find out about my background. They might find out these things. So it's safer not to have a relationship, but to have a safety relationship, which is up here. See, I can be in control that way. That creates the fantasy. That creates the insanity. Along with this, so many times because I'm so used to insanity and craziness, I find myself wanting to get involved in relationships with people who are not available for relationships. It's almost like there's an excitement, a craziness. If I can't have you, I want you. Become available, get lost. Because I'm always scared. Because literally, I like to have control inside of myself. That's the crazy part about secrets. When you get involved in secrets, a lot of times you have to hide them. You're always scared somebody's going to find out. And so therefore you got to make the story even stronger and even better. It's sad. But see, again, I literally try to get involved in things that are clandestine and crazy. I remember a good friend of mine lived up in Cherry Hill. He got involved in a relationship with a particular lady in New York. This lady was a nurse. She lived in New York. And what he would do, he would drive in the evening after work, 6, 7 o'clock at night, drive up to New York, spend the night with her, and drive back in time for work the next morning. He was living out his fantasy. But then when she started to push him So I had to talk to him about that scary word to a fantasy, that word commitment. He immediately had to ditch her and get rid of her because all the fears set in. Because again, he could play the role external, but he did not want her to get to know him internally. Too many secrets, too many craziness, too much unsaid. So again, I like the excitement, I like the craziness, but at the same time, I get caught up in the voidness. It's a sad thing to watch because after a period of time, it almost becomes my normal. I look for all these types of things that I can really do all kinds of stuff in my mind. And by the way, don't get me wrong, you know, I'm not putting fantasy down because certain fantasies are okay. As long as you know it's a fantasy, it's not a reality. You know, my wife always jokes with me because I used to always have a thing for Goldie Hawn. And my wife used to say to me all the time, your girlfriend's on TV, you better go check her out. And we get a laugh out of that. The bottom line is we have, attraction is normal. You'll be attracted to someone, that's a normal process. But when you play things out, get caught up in the fantasy level, can become dangerous. Third area is called caretaking. The caretakers are what I always refer to as the goody two shoes kids. These are the kids that have to grow up too fast. These are the angry kids. I always say they're the angry kids with a smile on their face because they're responsible, which means very many times they have to relinquish their childhood. They have to become responsible too early. So as a result, then it's almost like they become these little adults. And as a result, they have this fantasy about they've got the responsibility to take care of people. And they love being involved in relationships with people that need someone to take care of them. So we see the types of, they love being involved with sickies, with people that need help, to be involved with, so they can be in charge. Here we go again with that control thing. See, me in charge, me take care of you, but don't you dare get better. Why? Because I can bitch about you, gripe about you, complain about you. But deep down inside, please don't get better. Because literally, I like taking care of people. I like fixing people. I like being in charge. So in a relationship, it's almost like I constantly put you down so I can constantly be in charge of you and taking care of you. Very many caretakers get involved in enabling and constantly migrating into their life people that are like children. They love having a relationship with, I refer to as an adult kid. I use the term. So they like being in relationships with the isolator because they can literally constantly have this person to work on. But some of the crazy stuff that goes along with this is really scary. Because again, so many times, what am I doing? I'm literally walking around with a lot of anger inside of me. I always tell this story. You've heard me tell it before. My aunt lived in Pennsauken, New Jersey, my Aunt Annie. And she was in a wheelchair. I used to go visit my aunt a lot. And every time I went to see her, this Italian lady who lived next door would automatically come over to the house because we had coffee and tea together. And she would bring some of her baked goods over and we sit around the table. And all she ever did was, this lady who came over, is bitch about her husband. I've been married to this bum for 48 years. He's a bum. He does nothing. I cook, I clean, I get his dinner ready. He does nothing but sit in that chair. He never does a thing. And she went on and on and on. Well, after about 6 or 7 visits of listening to this talk, I probably had it memorized by now. So for some crazy reason, don't ask me why I did this, but I said to her one day, "Why do you stay with him?" She almost ripped my head off, yelling at me and saying, "Because I love him." I'm going to tell you a secret. God forbid that man ever try to do anything. She'd kill him. Basically, she enjoyed the insanity, the craziness, the control. And that issue when it comes to relationships, they're not supposed to be control ships or manipulation ships or con ships. That's not what a relationship is. And so many times in life, we see that happening, where basically we get lost, we get sad. I've seen it happen in senior citizens a lot too, where very many times, because they don't know how to have relationships, many people build a relationship with a pet more than they do with a person, because the pet's safer. It's safer to be connected with a pet because a pet doesn't talk back to you. So there's that safety thing again. Also, it's a control thing. So I share all these different things with you because when I talk about addictive relationships, I'm talking about something which you'll hear me talk about a lot in the weeks to come. The ultimate relationship that we have in life is the one that we have with ourselves. In fact, I want to go on a limb and say this. It is the only relationship that any of us can have. See, working on yourself is a full-time job. And here's how relationships work. If I do work on me and I'm comfortable being me, then the energy from me will go out to others. Earlier tonight, I talked about something called the law of attraction. And the law of attraction is real. We attract into our life the energy going on inside of us. So I'm coming from all these negative places I talked about tonight. I'm going to attract into my life people that will fit into that. I don't know why. Let me give you an example, and this is another true story. I'll just change things around a little bit because I don't know what I'm talking about. This lady came to see me one time and she said, "Vince, I met this wonderful man. He's really good to me, and I like taking care of him. He's a good guy. So I've moved in with him and I'm living with him. But I'm a little nervous because he has some strange things that he does." And I said, "What?" "Well, for one thing, in our bedroom, there's a photograph of him and his ex-wife." I said, "Oh boy." But she said, "The thing that really scares me is I look a lot like his ex-wife." See, what he's doing is something called rebounding. She's a substitute. I hate to even tell her this, but if for any reason his ex wanted to come back to him, he'd drop her in 2 minutes flat. And that happens to a lot of people because so many times when we exit an unhealthy relationship, they say we should not get involved in another relationship for at least a year. Why do they say that? Because you should spend that year working on yourself, getting to know who you are, learning how to love yourself, learning how to respect and honor who you are. And if we work on that process and develop ourselves, then I really believe the law of attraction will take over. We attract into our life what's necessary for us. David Diamond, he does that law of attraction program. It's so excellent because it's true. It's true of the concept that literally we are products of attraction. So if my normal was abuse, and I'm a child, I'm going to attract abuse into my life, or I'm going to become an abuser because that's my normal. And so we pick up different traits and different characteristics. In my own childhood, I realized I picked up my addictive personality from my mother, who was the addict in my family. I picked up my eating disorder from my mother. I also picked up my codependency issues from my father. My father was the codependent of the century, Mr. Wonderful, Mr. Fantastic, who did everything for everybody. When my father died, he was the glue that kept our family together. When he died, our family fell apart. He was the ultimate caretaker. Everybody depended on him for everything. I picked up a lot of those traits in my own life. That's why I can talk about this stuff and be connected with it. Because I realize over and over again, many times we migrate towards the negative because the negative is going on inside of us. And that's why we got to go back to work on us and build that relationship and let things happen naturally. We have this crazy concept. I got to find somebody. See, I got to find somebody by the time I'm 30. I hate to tell you this, but nothing will happen to you except when you become 31. It's amazing. Because we have all these rules and regulations in our society, that I got to find the one. But if you want to find the one, go look in the mirror. That's the one you have to work on. Then other stuff will come into your life. So no matter what we do in the course of our journey, I really believe that we're led and we're guided. And things will happen if we have faith and we have trust. We'll be led to the people we're supposed to be led to. I see this in my own life. Sometimes when you're not looking, things happen. They happen because they're supposed to happen. I look at life and I realize today we have to look within our own selves and realize the fact that many of us have picked up traits and characteristics. And they fit into these three categories. I know caretaking was a big part of mine. I joked about it today because I say, I'm a Gemini. I was born May 24th. That means I have two people inside of me. And I look at it this way. There's a life I lived up to age 44, and there's a life I lived in good recovery from 44 on. And I see the difference in the two. The other one was basically when I was empty, and I literally was living in a shell. And now I'm connected, and I find stuff in my life, and things change differently. And so I share this tonight because I wanted to just kind of explain unhealthy relationships, but also to realize where they come from, where they're connected. And it's sad. But I think what's so important is don't sell yourself short. Once we can acknowledge things and look at things, work on things, it's never too late. I always smile about this because I had the wonderful opportunity of performing a wedding for one of my therapists, the starting point. She was never married. She was a great therapist. She had two children when she was in her addiction, and those two children stayed with her. She got married when she was 70 years old, and the groom was 72, and her two daughters stood up for her. It's amazing, isn't it? You look at it. I did a wedding right here in Holiday City for a gentleman that was 92 years old, and the bride was 87. So you never know. how life is going to take you and where it's going to take you and what journey it's going to take you on. And I get amazed over and over again by so many different things. And every time I meet people and connect with people, I see the tremendous beauty in every individual I meet. So it's a beautiful thing about life and relationships. And I have a lot of gratitude for all the relationships I've been connected to in my years around recovering people. You guys are sure a phenomenal family to be part of and be connected to. And so my prayer tonight is that we can open our hearts and open our minds to be able to go through the struggles we have to go through to come to the awakenings we have to come to. So next week, what I'm going to do is concentrate on how to have a healthy relationship with yourself as a person. Then the third week, we'll talk about how to have relationships with others. Then in the fourth week, we'll do relationships and sexuality. So let us pray. God, we come before you tonight in prayer. We ask the God of our understanding, our divine presence, to guide us and be with us. We ask the higher power to be there to guide us on our journey. We are on a journey in this world. You have sent so many teachers into our life. Give us the strength and the beauty to be able to look at even the mistakes that we make, the things that happen, the experiences, the losses, so we can learn and grow from them. And realize our purpose on this earth is to be open to where we're going to be led, to be open to new things and new directions in life. Teach us not to be afraid, but teach us to be open. It teaches us to realize the beauty of every experience, even those that are not so nice. Hopefully we can learn from them too. Teach us to be people of growth, people of faith, people of trust. Teach us to be open to where the journey of life will lead us. But above all, teach us not to be afraid. Look within our own heart and our own spirit, and to share that spirit with all that we need. So in gratitude and love, we come here in the spirit of learning and the spirit of growth. So we pray and we ask for guidance and direction, and we ask for it in your name. Amen.